Madam Chair, Head 91, Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment, in the sum of $9,352,508.
Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to give voice to this supplementary within the ministry for $9.35 million, and on the Head 91, Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment. Let me at the outset, Madam Chair, allow you to know that there are three parts to this supplementary on the Head 91. First part, on the program 422, deals with community development funds that have been allocated in the sum of $1.722 million for the completion of the community facility at Bathsheba. Madam Chair and members of the Lord Chamber, we recognize that at a time like now, and we often use the phrase, our sense of self, social identification, and the commitment of caring for each other started right within communities. And it is with this vision that we, as a government, continue to build community centers within strategic locations within this country. And Bathsheba is known, all of us know Bathsheba is a mecca for surfing. And if we carry on with respect to Bathsheba, we can say that Bathsheba is a well-known tourist attraction. This facility, though, will have some cultural element to it as well. And we recognize that there's a need to give young people, not only young people, but persons within communities, the opportunity to unearth their talents, whether it is through surfing, in sports, whether it is through the culinary arts, whether it is through the creative industries. We recognize that facilities such as these within key strategic locations are important. And hence, Madam Chair, I leave it at that because there's no question as to the importance of community centers and the role that they will play in terms of building out Barbados and giving people the opportunity to find a place and to partner with key institutions such as Samuel Jackman Prescott Institution, Barbados Vocational Training Board. So we have avenues and facilities that our young people can indeed learn a skill, and the phrase that I often use, become global citizen. So, Madam Chair, with those few words, I move on to the second part of the supplementary, which is on the program 277, Youth Affairs and Sports. Account code 212, where the some funds, $4.97 million have been allocated for the hosting of 5 T20 internationals of the English tour, which will occur in January to March, and 1 test match that will occur in March. The 5 T20s will occur or will take place here from the period January 20th to January 29th. But the touring parties, the English touring party, will arrive in Barbados on January the 15th. Now, we have to recognize the role that cricket has played in this landscape, in the socio-economic development of this country. Cricket, as in commerce, can be called our core business. Cricket is a symbol and a model of national excellence. And I will go further to say, Barbadians per capita is considered the number one sport of cricket is played in Barbados. Per capita, we play the most cricket of any other nation on this earth. Per capita. Barbadians, that is. And that is why we have to recognize a tour such as an English tour to Barbados, the role that it will play in the economic landscape of this country. Gone are the days when sports have been recognized as only serving recreational and social needs of our people. Sports and all the sporting disciplines form part of the economic landscape of this country. And like I said, if we look at cricket, cricket must be the basis on which we build on and below everything else that we do in our society. We have enjoyed tremendous success with cricket in this country. And it is only when we begin to speak of Sir Wes Hall, Sir Charlie Griffith, Sir Garfield Sobers, Sir Gordon Greenwich, that we recognize that Barbados from way back in the 1960s could have fielded a West Indies team that could rival any other country on this earth. And it is only recently that we saw some young men on Facebook criticizing West Indies cricket to my dissatisfaction. Despite how we are playing, we still have to recognize the role that cricket has played in national development, not only in Barbados, but across the landscape of the Caribbean. And someone said, while criticizing the West Indies team, they said, you know, Barbados can field a team that can play any nation on this earth, and we believe that they will be successful. That is questionable, and I won't go there. But just to show you how we value cricket and how we feel about cricket. So this tour, and let me say that the bidding process to win 5 T20 was no easy feat, because we have some 10 venues across the region and the various territories, who were part of the bidding process for these T20s. But it was said with much glee that the British prefer to be here in Barbados. And at a time like now, where we have been impacted significantly by COVID-19 pandemic, they prefer not to be traveling from territory to territory, but to have all 5 games played in one territory, and Barbados was the place of choice. I want to thank the BCA, who were part of the bidding process with the government, who assisted in this process. I want to thank them for giving us the support that we as a nation, as a country, can truly call ourselves the #1 cricketing nation. And it is not anything to brag about, anything to boast about. History has it recorded that Barbados has achieved tremendous success out of all the Caribbean territories. Who too would have achieved success? We have achieved more success than any, or the most success out of all of the Caribbean territories in the sporting discipline of cricket. So I'm elated, and I know the citizens of this country are elated. I know the business sector of this country is elated. I know the small businesses who will set up shop to sell food, who will sell several paraphernalia during the tour in January and March. They are elated. But I know the Barbadian economy, and my colleagues are elated. All of Barbados, they're happy to see that at a time like now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to successfully bid and won the bid to host the English tour, and not only host the English tour, but to have all 5 of the T20s and 1 test match. It is, thank you, it is anticipated that some 10,000 visitors, persons coming out of the UK, will be attracted or will come to these shores for each of the T20 matches. And it is also projected that some 16 to 18,000 spectators, family, this is in addition to players, will be visiting our shores in March for the test match. Now, at a time like now, when our economy needs a boost, it needs a boost. And indeed, this is good news for the country. And I'm happy to be part of such an achievement by the Barbados government and the key stakeholders, the Barbados Cricket Association, to bring such good news. But we will caution, though, nonetheless, we're still operating in a pandemic. And part of the mandate is to have all persons vaccinated who will enter Kensington Oval to watch these T20s and test match. We cannot drop our guard, even though we are happy to have cricket here. But I say to Barbados, if you want to watch cricket, get vaccinated. And I say this on the floor of Parliament, use this, the lower house, because we cannot afford to have cricket here, and then we go to Kensington Oval, and then we have some calamity, what we call some commerce, with persons, patrons entering Kensington who are unvaccinated. We recognize the challenge, and my colleague, the member for the city, has done a remarkable job over the past 20 months and before. He was doing a job from the time he took up the office back in 2018. And I know he too will weigh in on the English tour. Some of my colleagues are laughing. Yes, he's still the member for the city, despite what we may say. He's still the honorable member for the city. Until. But we must also design some promotional initiatives to tell the UK cricket holiday market what a beautiful place Barbados is. Back in the days of 1978 to 2009, almost every county club visited Barbados. I'm not going to be much longer, but I want the record to show that between that period, 2009 and 2018, we had virtually little or no cricket. We saw the Sir Garfield Sobers Junior Tournament literally dwindle away. And this was pre-COVID, where we attracted teams from England, the league teams and the county teams. And every single village within Barbados, every single cricketing facility from St. Lucie to St. Philip had a touring team playing cricket. And I can call from Lords back to Princess Margaret, Three Houses. Cricket is played there also. Rices. We had cricket playing there. So, Madam Chair, I am pleased to report that this country will receive an economic boost. This country will have the opportunity again to revive or support the partnership between the UK and Barbados that long existed before my time and back in the 1930s and the 1940s that we somehow lost between that period 2009 to 2018. Madam Chair, it gives me pleasure to move on to the final aspect of this proposal that will see some 2.66 million allocated with the lighting of 37 sporting facilities across the length and breadth of this country. Madam Chair, we recognize, and I will say it again, sport has been a pillar of the Barbados, I can't say the economy, but existence that predates each and every one of us in this country. And at a time like now, where persons are housed up, mental challenges have impacted, persons have not been able to get the necessary exercise that they were accustomed to pre-COVID. But more importantly, to develop young sportsmen, world-class sportsmen and women, we must bring back community sports. And we pledge in our manifesto that under the BLP, there'll be general development of sports. And our thinking is to elevate sports as a center pillar of Barbadian national identity. I mentioned that. Social development and economic prosperity. And in an effort to develop a sustainable high-performance system aimed at producing and maintaining world-class Barbadian sportsmen and women, there were certain key deliverables that we placed in our manifesto. And I will list two of them. Expanding school-based sporting programs and supporting greater levels of senior, community, and work-based participation in sports. And the second one, equipping sports facilities with solar lights to improve capacity for training of teams and sports persons. This is what we are doing with this project. We're equipping all facilities across the length and breadth of Barbados with solar lights to improve the capacity for training teams and sporting personnel. We recognize also that businesses, most sportsmen and women, they work from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30. So to have these facilities lit across the length and breadth of Barbados, this will give those persons the opportunity still to come home, get some exercise, and also train the young people, because we recognize a lot of young persons are left unattended on these sporting facilities. And to have them lit will also solve some of the social ills that we've seen creeping into society. It's often said in the Bible that men of evil like darkness. So we intend to light every single playing field that we can. Thus far, it is 37 that we will lit between now and the end of March. And I just would take the opportunity just to list a few of them. Marshall Parkinson Field in St. Michael.
Thank you.
Queen's Park in St. Michael. Station Hill in St. Michael. The Pine in St. Michael, Parkinson Field. Arsenal Playing Field, Lears, Mac Hill. Then we go to St. Philip, Foul Bay, Gemswick, Princess Margaret, St. Martin, Ruby, St. Catherine. There are many that will be lit in St. Philip. Then we go to Christchurch, Lodge Road, Louders, Inchmarlow. We go to St. John, Codrington College, St. Margaret, St. Mark, St. Joseph, Grantley Adams, St. Andrew, Isolation Cavaliers, one of the best cricketing ground in this country without lights. Attract many UK teams. That's the only ground. Conward Hunt, Good Shepherd in St. James, Hoyts Village in St. James, Trents in St. James, Silver Sands in Christchurch. And I go to St. George, to my colleague next to me, Roach Village, which played more out-of-season cricket than any other village in this country. Sheffield in St. George, St. George Secondary. Then I go to my jurisdiction, Bide Mill, Greens and Draxall. I'm not leaving out St. Thomas, Prout and Holy Innocent. I'm not leaving out St. Lucie either, Crab Hill, Ignatius Bayer. So those are the 37 from St. Lucie, from St. Lucie to St. Philip. Madam Chair, these are 3 wonderful projects that the country ought to be proud of, coming out of the Ministry of Sports and the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment. And with those words, Madam Chair, I beg that Head 91 stand par.
Thank you. Are you speaking around? You're speaking? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I commend the honorable member for St. George South on presenting at least the last aspect of the supplemental request. He was very much and very loud in his boast as to the breadth and scope of this lighting program. He went from pillar to post, from north to south, east to west. He even went to what he called his own jurisdiction. So he is presiding, I presume, in some judicial capacity with respect to where these lightings and these facilities are to be set up. And he went the length and breadth of urban Barbados. St. Michael, I hear. St. Michael, I hear. St. Michael, I hear. Now, there's a very big community in Richmond. A large community in Richmond, in Alkins, Gills Gap, Upper Goodland, parts of Barbries Hill. And the honorable gentleman would not say anything to us about St. Leonard's School pasture. You know, there was once an honorable gentleman in this place who expressed the view that the St. Leonard's School should be closed down because of the community in which it was located, because of all the social deviance and some crime and violence, more by reputation than reality associated with the area. And the honorable gentleman, for whom I have the greatest respect and admiration, and I have lauded in this place, and I've asked that you name the St. George Secondary School in honor of the man's service to the public. And he said that the St. Leonard School should be, I disagreed then. And way back then, a couple decades ago, I suggested rather than close it down, it needs to be made a sixth form secondary institution. So the other party in administration didn't start that discussion. It started in St. Michael West. But St. Leonard School pasture, they're very large communities. And I must confess I have not been there in 2 weeks. So if you've got lights there now, you should correct me. Because if you don't have, you need to get some lighting facilities in that place. These communities have produced people of sporting renown, Madam Chair. Now, so I don't want to criticize in any way the intention of the supplemental request, but I do have a couple of questions. I wonder if the Honorable Minister might share with us whether there was, and if there was, what was the advice of the medical community with respect to the hosting of this English tour, which will bring by estimation 10,000 people who will make multiple movements across this country every day, and they come from a jurisdiction in which now there is to be found, and in which now there's spread abroad some new variants on this coronavirus that threaten again the well-being of those communities. And if we get this wrong, the well-being potentially of the Barbadian community and society. I want to make it clear, I'm not on my feet at this moment standing and saying we should not have the tour. I'm simply asking, what is the medical advice, if any sort, given with respect to this tour when multiple thousands of people will descend upon this land, will make movements all across this land, intermix with the local population and other visitors to this place at a time when we are seriously threatened? What was the medical advice given, if any? And did the medical community give the green light, wholeheartedly so, to proceeding with plans for this tour? We can't even seem to be able to get our own cricket season we customarily have here properly mounted for this year. We have had some stops and starts, but we anticipate that in a few months we should be able to welcome warmly and engage intimately 10,000 people for at least 10 or 12 or 14 days in this place. And I hope that we are acting on the basis of proper medical advice. I'd like to hear that, what it was, and if it was wholeheartedly affirmed. Other thing I'd like to ask of the Honorable Minister is with respect to vaccines, because he seemed to indicate, and I might be wrong and I stand asking to be corrected if I am, are we going to make vaccines mandatory on the part of Barbadians to enter Kensington to be spectators when this cricket comes to town? Minister said enough for me to raise the question. He did not say sufficient for me to say, he said vaccines will be mandatory. He did not couch his words in a way for me to be assured that they would not be. So the question is he revealing to us government's intention for mandatory vaccinations for Barbadians who will enter among the vaccinated visitors when cricket comes to town in a couple of months? Just those couple of questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Honorable member for the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wasn't expecting to be speaking at this point in time, but in response to the legitimate questions posed by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, in my capacity as Minister of Health and Wellness, I would like to indicate to the Honorable Member that the COVID monitoring unit would have met with the cricketing authorities in relation to this particular bid, which had to go in by a particular time, and would have made some determinations in relation to seating capacity at Kensington Oval, as well as how we would deal with patrons attending the cricket matches at Kensington, the 5-1 and T20s, I believe, and the test match, which follows. And the decision was taken to give it the green light. Obviously, if hell had to break loose in COVID terms, that is something that would have to be taken into consideration. And when I say had to break loose, I mean even beyond where it is right now. The reality is that part of the arrangements given by the ministry in relation to the seating capacity was, yes, for fully vaccinated patrons, and then also for persons who are not fully vaccinated but who are desirous of attending the games to be able to have the appropriate tests in advance of admission. And all of these were based on the capacity as stipulated by the COVID monitoring unit for persons attending the games. And I don't have the figures, regrettably, in my head, but I can provide that subsequent to this debate. And that is really what we have been working with, and that is the direction that was given
Member for
from
the
the
city.
Ministry of Health.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Just a point of clarity, if I'm allowed. When I hear references sometimes to the COVID monitoring unit, I'm not too sure specifically in every context to whom that reference is being made. My query specifically was with respect to the medical team, the chief medical advisor and his team. And according to what the honorable member is saying, he treats to arrangements at the scene of the cricket itself. Now, if you have 10,000 people descending upon that place, the capacity at Kensington is hardly 10,000 or just beyond. And if you have them seated in prescribed arrangements of 6-foot spacing, then you are reducing the capacity. So I am unsure as to exactly what is being intimated to us. Has the chief medical officer and the team at his level approved wholeheartedly that this store should go ahead. And in terms of the arrangements that are being contemplated by the COVID monitoring team and its advice, are we in fact contemplating 10,000 persons plus Barbadian and other West Indian visitors as spectators?
Honorable member for the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me say that the COVID monitoring unit that I'm referring to, and there's only one, that is the unit that has the responsibility within the Ministry of Health and Wellness for determining venues for the staging of events and also the numbers. And you would recall that on several occasions it has been indicated in the media and at the press conferences and so on that if persons wanted, for example, to have something outside of the stipulated numbers within the directive, that they can make an application to the COVID monitoring unit, and they will then go and determine based on space and ventilation and things like that, even for church services and so on, that is the unit that has that responsibility, and that unit falls under the command of the Chief Medical Officer, as all technical units in the Ministry of Health and Wellness are. So that's the first thing. And in relation to the numbers, I did not give the specific numbers. I heard a number of 10,000 plus this, plus that. I don't recall, as I indicated earlier, but I can provide that information on a subsequent occasion. But the unit would have gone and looked at the space and the seating and the everything at Kensington and determined what would be the accepted limit in terms of numbers attending the cricket at the Kensington Oval. And that is what I was trying to say. And yes, the Ministry of Health, through the Chief Medical Officer, would have given the blessings to the tour that is coming up in January, I believe. And the Chief Medical Officer would have met also with the authorities of the Barbados Cricket Association.
Honorable member for St. George South. Want to wrap up?
Thank you, member for the city, and thank you, member for St. Michael West, the honorable leader of the opposition, for raising the concerns. But we know, honorable member, with respect to St. Leonard's, and I'm happy that you raised it, because we will look and see what are some of the areas within, and I use the word jurisdictions. You don't like those words, but I don't want to use the other word, but okay. Within St. Michael West that would need lighting, and certainly we will speak with you. You're a key stakeholder in this, and you have people who look up to you in the church and in various aspects of the community, and this is a government for all. We are an inclusive government, not an exclusive government. So I heard your plea, and your plea will be recognized. In addition, though, the whole aspect of the COVID monitoring unit and the Minister of Health, thank you, Minister of Health. I won't want to get into the actual details, but we have been looking at places like at Kensington where we can have additional seating, so we can have our 6 feet spacing, accommodated on the tour. And the numbers of 10,000 and 16 and 18,000, don't be afraid, member for St. Michael West. Those numbers mean a lot to this country. Those numbers mean a lot to you. Those numbers mean a lot to the people that you represent in terms of getting them from off the blocks, getting them out the houses, giving them some meaningful employment, and it will start the economy. That is the big picture, and we have what it takes to put all the necessary systems in place to make sure that this store is successful and is safe. So with those few words, Madam Chair, I beg that Head 91 stand par.
Question is that Head 91 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. Just reminding members that we have just under 55 minutes to go to get through 6 heads.
Head 83, ma'am. Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security in the amount of $10,433,483.
Honorable member for St. Philip South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is indeed a pleasure for me to rise and defend the support that the Minister in the Ministry of Finance is giving to the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security to carry out its work in Barbados. And equally, Madam Chair, it's a pleasure for me to take off this mask because I was about beginning to start to cough. I wouldn't want to convey the wrong impression. So, Madam Chair, I'm indeed pleased to note that this supplementary is broken into three. It is done so that the BADMC can carry out the work with the LEARS project. All honorable members will note that the LEARS project was announced by the Governor General in the throne speech of September 15, 2020, when it was made clear that LEARS was going to be developed as a project in the urban corridor that allows for Barbadians to be able to have access to 100 acres of land, and I will come back to that. And also it is providing for the sugar industry, which is going to be transitioned very shortly into a sugarcane industry. And we are seeking to put in the support that replace the ECRIS, and that support is a climate mitigation subsidy. Given all of what is taking place with climate change, we thought it best to address the issue of climate change and therefore put in a subsidy for farmers who would have had to endure severe flooding at points or severe drought periods, which would have impacted the sucrose quality in the sugar canes and therefore made it very difficult for us to achieve the yields that were projected for the 2021 sugar harvest. And then, of course, Madam Chair, you know the work of Met Services in Barbados, particularly now our ability to be able to track, predict, and accurately determine when climatic events in terms of floods, storms, freak storm we had, and of course Hurricane Elsa would have been impacting Barbados. And I must commend the work of the Met Office for the sterling work they have been doing throughout the hurricane season and continue to do, even to the extent that they can give us early predictions of when we're going to have temperatures upwards of 33, 34 degrees Celsius, which is unknown to Barbados, because previously we were hot and we were getting 30 degrees. So you understand the significant change that takes place because our temperatures usually range around 28. So we have gone up significantly. And so, Madam Chair, I want to state that the sugar industry and the private farmers, the BSIL farmers in the industry, have had severe problems prior to this government coming to power. And those problems stem from the fact that they had outstanding payments that we had to settle in 2018 and have continued now to make those payments current so that they don't run from one year into the next with outstanding funds. And so, Madam Chair, the funds that are being made available under sub-program 178 is to help us now to pay off the balance that is outstanding to the private farmers in the sum of $2,637,442. And that was settled for the 2021 sugar harvest and keep our books current as they ought to be under the BERT program. And then, Madam Chair, the Met Services Department really, this supplementary is to keep them going. They would have had to spend money on equipment to be able to bring us up to date with what is taking place, to modernize Met Services, and at the same time maintain supplies, maintain property, and cover operating costs. Well, Madam Chair, the bulk of this is really $7,431,041 under sub-program 636 to the Barbados Agricultural Marketing, Barbados Agricultural Development and Marketing Corporation, BADMC, for the development of the LEAS program. And I start by saying that I have heard so many different commentators postulate how they feel about agriculture, that I have had 3 years of learning on a curve that is so steep that I believe that at the approach we have taken, we have started to flatten that curve. But I also strongly believe that it takes presence of mind to be able to deal with the mountain of mistruths that have also been spread about the agricultural sector, including a comparison to suggest that nothing has been done for farmers in Barbados, and that we spend money on all other things while farmers are left to struggle. And I wish to state not only this $7 million we are spending on agriculture to help bring along small Barbadians, because the LEARS project is about how we can empower and enfranchise the ordinary Barbadian who otherwise would not have had a chance. But I also say, Madam Chair, that on approaching the 2020 shutdown for the pandemic that we are currently going through, the Ministry of Agriculture also made $2 million available to small farmers to access through the Agricultural Development Fund with very favorable interest rates. And those funds were drawn down, and we had an increase in production. The Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security also embarked on a cultivation program that allowed for people who wanted to get land cultivated, no matter where. We were able to provide the services free of cost to those farmers. And of course, all of us know under the FEED program, Farmers Empowerment and Enfranchisement Drive, we are able to attract just over 1,200 persons who are either in the process of being trained or graduated from the program. And we are in the process of making sure that all of them get land or indeed beehives if they're doing apiculture and the equipment. And equally those who have expressed an interest in aquaculture, that we're also moving to make sure they can be facilitated. Now, I'll be the first to admit that legally, when you're going to give people land, you have to make sure you go through titles and all the rest of it. And so that can slow down the process. But I'm equally able to confirm that over 500 persons who have passed through the FEED program have been allocated land, and that our challenges really are beyond just the allocation of land, but more to do with climate change. Where traditionally in Barbados, people relied on what is called rain-fed agriculture. And therefore, since we are seeing less rains and more droughts now, you will find that farmers go through a greater struggle. And so the BADMC has been working tirelessly to be able to provide the irrigation systems to be able to help farmers to get access to water. We are now currently developing a reservoir at River in St. Philip, so that those farmers at St. Philip will have a continuous supply of water year-round, but more particularly during the drought period. We're also doing the same at LEARS, where LEARS will start up front with a 21 million gallons reservoir. And then at Haggots and St. Andrew, we've just about completed another reservoir so that we can develop the orchard there, where Barbadians who know Haggots as it was in the past will be able to pass there and see all varieties of local Barbadian fruit. And as I speak, that work is currently going on with the reservoir almost finished. And then at Spring Hall, come January, we're also going to put a major reservoir there. We're looking at some 75 million gallons to be able to serve the north of the island. So if that is not doing work in agriculture, I would dare say that we are at a stage in Barbados where people do not understand how you fix your micro fundamentals to be able to achieve your macro objectives. And that, to my mind, represents all the foolery that you will hear when people start to speak. And to my mind, Madam Chair, LAIR's project is about fixing your micro fundamentals. Coming out of LAIR's, we are not just going to have land given to people. LAIR's in itself is going to present an opportunity for 23 acres of land going into black belly sheep farming with potable water through the Barbados Water Authority. It is also going to have a Met Services monitoring station so that they can know how to prepare for floods or indeed droughts. And then the LAIR's project will have a metered system which is second to none. Previously, what happened is that people would have a metered system where you pay after you use water. And this has posed a tremendous amount of problems for the BADMC in terms of collecting for water supply. As a matter of fact, we have debt, and I must say bad debt, well over $2 million, dating all the way back to the late 90s. And we have to make a decision on how we are going to address that. But none of the farmers have been dislocated or cut off. This new system is going to be more like the system we have for mobile phones, where you have a pay-as-you-go system. So if you know that you need, say, for example, 200 cubic meters, you know what it will cost. Your meter will be set, you pay for your 200 cubic meters, and that is supplied to you, you pay up front. If you run out, you come back to the BADMC for what is called a top-up. And therefore, we now eliminate the risk of carrying bad debt for water. So this project basically is not only contemporary, but the thought and innovation that went into it is second to none in agriculture in Barbados. And I strongly believe that this is the way forward. As we seek to empower and enfranchise farmers, we also have to bring them along as business people. The other component to LAIR's is that LAIR's is broken into two projects. One that is treated to just like the feed program, Farmers Empowerment and Enfranchisement Drive, and then CARE. CARE is really a project that is designed to bring along community farmers. So hence, community agriculture response and enfranchisement. And what this is seeking to do is around small communities. You cultivate land for people, bring community groups together, and at the same time, you seek to provide the services for community farming and backyard farming to take place. So we are going to develop a Master Gardeners program at LAIR's, where you literally have Master Gardeners who will come in and train people on 5,000 square feet of land or 10,000 square feet of land to be able to do small farming or community gardening. Community gardening is known very well in the UK. I'm sorry that the honorable member for Christchurch West isn't here, because this is a project that he had been pushing for the longest while. And what this does, it gives people an opportunity, particularly people who are considered among our elderly, to be able to come out and participate, planting things that they would enjoy eating, and at the same time having an opportunity to relate to each other, getting some exercise in farming, and then be able to share their knowledge and their produce with the community. And of course, then you have the commercial side, which is under the feed program. And under that, you start at a minimum of 2 acres and up, and those farmers would enjoy the same benefits as those who are currently under the feed program, where we give you cultivation, we give you training, we give you a startup kit, which would include your seeds or your seedlings, we give you fertilizers, and we give you the irrigation system. And of course, Madam Chair, what will happen is that the BADMC would also take 40% of the supply from the farmers, and then SHFEC has an arrangement in place where they would take 20%. But that does not end there. We are also setting up an arrangement right along the Lears project for us to develop structures or stalls so that farmers can also offload their produce and sell to the public as people drive by or visit the area. And then, of course, we're going to put in training for farmers to be able to do pest management control. We're putting in training for farmers to be able to manage the use of fertilizers. And we're putting in training so that farmers can understand how to plant. And videos obviously will be done to be able to give them an opportunity as they seek to develop their kitchen gardens or backyard gardens or community farms, an opportunity of how to do. And how to do will be how to plant, how to mulch, how to do various things in agriculture. We expect that this project will have approximately 153 new farmers, or farmers with experience. And the farmers will come generally from the same catchment area right along the urban corridor. And we expect to be able to have a very modern, what we call greenhouse or hydroponics farm, driven by technology, so that any cooperative or individual who so desires can be able to operate a farm driven by technology and then be able to share that knowledge and experience to other farmers who are interested in technology-driven farming. So that, Madam Chair, when we are finished, the sum that is being committed to this project is also for the entire development of the area, including putting in roads. And I want to speak on this for a bit. You'll find that farmers have been subjected to all kinds of, I dare say, inhumane treatment at times. So that if it floods or if it rains heavily, the terrain is so muddy that they have to risk in vehicles going through that terrain to get to their crops. Many times they will stick in mud. They have to get heavy equipment to bring them out. Many times vehicles overturn. I recall the experience of Dr. Sandra Bellamy when I went to Grove a Sunday morning with her. And my vehicle couldn't take the terrain. As I started to go up the incline, my Chevy started to go in all kinds of different directions. And she shared with me her first experience going into agriculture, where she was on a truck. And a similar thing happened and the truck overturned, and she was in that truck. What we are doing at Lears is to eliminate all of those eventualities. And therefore, we will have proper roads in at Lears as well. And we will modernize the area to the extent that this project will stand as the one project, the example for agriculture development. And when we get to the Pine Basin, we will be doing a similar thing. So that, Madam Chair, and this should start this month as well. So that, Madam Chair, this supplementary for the BADMC and the BAMC for the private sugar farmers, I'm at office under Head 83. I do beg that the supplementary stand part.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm certainly not going to overly interfere with my honorable friend out of St. Philip South. I understand he's under sufficient stress as it is, and especially in that jurisdiction. So I'm not going to overly interfere with him. I really actually want to support the request for the funding. I'm glad to support anything that advances the intention of the program of government to bring farmers, new farmers, emerging farmers, into land access in Barbados. And I wish my honorable friend the best in pushing past any bureaucratic impediments which still remain, as he intimated. So understand the last point he made. And he may have made it simply in passing, Madam Chair, when his poor vehicle could not make traction on farmlands. And that is something to which I think the ministry must pay some attention. It's an area with which I think the farming community will need some subsidized or concessionary help. He was fortunate and blessed that the vehicle just slid. And Skid had the unfortunate experience, Madam Chair, in another country away from this place, of being in one such vehicle in wet conditions, and this was on a mountain top. And the same thing happened, and the vehicle, together with me and my passenger, went over the side of the mountain. And I'm thankful to God, and you're still here to stand and give support to my honorable friend from St. Philip South to get such road conditions addressed on farmlands in Barbados. It's a serious thing. We may pass it triflingly or even be jovial about it, but it is a serious thing. Now, the honorable member mentioned as well the matter of climate change. And I wanted to speak just briefly to that, because when it comes to the agricultural sector, this matter of climate resilience must be something which is given significant priority attention. Agriculture in Barbados, historically, yes, it was principally and primarily so on our front burner of economic activity. In recent times, in more recent times, and that's comparatively speaking, it has taken a second or third or fourth position in the line of priorities with respect to economic advancement and development in this country. But if we start to talk about climate resilience in Barbados and talk about it seriously and shout at the rest of the world as to their shortcomings, we have to take it seriously enough at home as to see what we can do to inbuild resilience. We can ask for funding, as we need to do. We can subscribe to the whole notion of green financing and green funding. But we certainly have to show to ourselves and the rest of the world that we're serious. And I think that is not only with respect to our coastal shorelines, it's not only with respect to our tourism sector, but certainly with respect to our agricultural sector. And I believe some priority must be given to not just being aware of what the impact of natural disaster can be, but how can we mitigate damage caused by the impact of natural disaster? How can we prepare up front by preventative measures to minimize that impact? Just to draw one example, Madam Chair, right now the whole business climate change is spawning new breeds of locusts plaguing certain parts of the world, in Africa, East Africa, Southwest Asia, parts of the Middle East. And I noted recently with some concern, and I'm sure this will not escape the attention of the Department of Agriculture, Trinidad is now facing a problem newly emerging of locusts and the interference with agricultural crops. And I wonder how prepared are we, to the extent that we can be prepared to mitigate something like that, to prevent something, because one of the dynamics to which we are subject is the fact that we are in that corridor for cyclone movement. And the warm waters of the Atlantic, it is said, warm waters help with the spread of these locust pests. And if they can reach Trinidad, come up through South America, it is not entirely beyond the realm of reason that in Barbados we could face this potential threat And I do not know to the extent that we can prevent it, but what plans do we have to mitigate it should that become the reality for us? Because some African countries are large enough, some Asian countries are large enough that they can experience that severely and still survive. I don't think that the Barbados agriculture sector will be able to survive something. That's just a concern I mentioned for my honorable brother's consideration.
Thank you. Honorable Member Philip South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I must confess that I really thought the honorable member for St. Michael West was going to give me some body blows, like some of those that I've been hearing in the public of agriculture and going nowhere. But I'm pleased to note that he agrees that we are going somewhere. And yes, we are currently reviewing our sanitary and phytosanitary legislation to be able to address matters related to pest diseases and relating to food safety and of course animal health. And you may be aware that we already have a committee in place in preparation for any eventuality of African swine fever coming to Barbados. So we are very proactive in the ministry, and I have to thank all the officers over there who are doing a tremendous job in helping me and also guiding me. And I'm eternally grateful to them. Only 2 weeks ago, we launched the bathroom and lunchroom facilities for farmers who traditionally would have had to resort to the bush or the cane fields at the call of nature. And I think that's a historic moment in Barbados, where farmers, particularly females, don't have to resort to the bush nor cane fields, but the facilities come with solar panels, charger ports for mobile phones, and of course, all of the protocols in place, including the temperature gauge for COVID, and then the female bathrooms are totally equipped. So, Madam Chair, with all that being said, and I know there will be another time when I can really speak to the issues raised by the honorable member. So I do beg that Head 83 do now pass.
Beg to second that.
Question is that Head 83 stand part. All members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. 4. Honorable members, we have 4 heads to pass in 25 minutes, so I'm begging that your comments, your remarks be as short as possible.
Yes, Madam Chair. Head 87, Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, in the amount of $13,972.
Honorable Member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No trouble, Honorable Member. I raised to move Head 87 in the sum of $14,713,972. Madam Chair, relatively straightforward in terms of the requests coming from the Ministry of Education, which I know is an area that touches on the heartstrings of almost every Barbadian and certainly every member within this chamber. And particularly in this particular crisis, I believe it is even more important, and I think most people would agree that all of the investment that we've made thus far in terms of education cannot come to naught in a pandemic, and therefore we still have a responsibility to be able to make sure that while providing for health care, that we also adequately provide for educational opportunities as well. The first program, which relates to professional services, much has been said in relation to mental health and wellness during this period, the impact on not only our students, but also our teachers, our ancillary staff, our principals, and just as it has impacted on all of us, making the transition from the classroom environment into the home environment to be able to teach classes and also to make that transition to also learn as well. I think we all have to be mindful that there is significant support that has to be given to all of the persons who work within education. This administration has been at the forefront from the time it came to office of adding in the educational sector both professional services for social and behavioral support. We had a lot of issues with violence in schools in the early stages. We would have added safety officers. We would have also added recently the school counselors. We've also added social workers at the primary school level. I think there are over 30 individuals who have come into the arms of education to help to support the Student Services Department. That said, we are mindful that the persons who are part of that support team also require certain assistance to be able to deliver what is necessary to the persons whom they are responsible for. And so the first sum is the sum of $136,000, which is required to cover projected expenditure under the Student Support Services Unit for psychological and family support services, for online assessment training, again, because in many cases they have to also now operate in an online environment as opposed to a face-to-face environment, and therefore need to be equipped to carry out those types of meetings online. The funds are also for mental health support, student services support, and team building, and also to assist with the enrichment of these safety officers and the new school counselors, some of whom the latter would have started just last week actually. And so the remaining safe school counselors who will now be assisting a number of our guidance counselors across the schools, they have now come in preparation for when the face-to-face will actually commence again. In relation to the Mental Health and Wellness Committee, I'll just briefly touch on that as well. We took a decision a few months ago that, we needed to not only recognize the mental health issues, but we also needed to collect necessary data as to how this whole episode of this pandemic has been affecting our students and our teachers. And so our Mental Health and Wellness Committee, which is chaired by the senior psychologist in the Ministry of Education, along with a team of persons with the psychiatric hospital, number of persons from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, as well as private practitioners. They have been working very closely with our teaching profession, providing the necessary training and support to allow them to be able to cope in this particular environment as well. So that is moving well. We hope that we can publish perhaps a quarterly review soon in terms of what is the status of the impact on this pandemic on education generally, but in particular on the people who have to deliver instruction in the classroom and also on our students as well. In relation to the Educational Technical Management Unit, the sum of $1.891 million is being requested to carry out the ad hoc maintenance program across the nursery and primary schools, and a further sum of $376,000 is required to construct additional classroom space at the George Lamming Primary School for some of our special needs students. I'll take those in turn, Madam Chair. The first one being, I think, one which everybody knows I am well known for, which is trying to make sure that the school plant is a place where teachers want to come to school and teach, and students equally want to go to school and learn. And so we've had to spend significant sums over the last few years trying to improve the conditions within these various school plants, acting from the nursery to the tertiary level. And in particular, our domestic summer program has had to see an increase from about 17 schools back in 2017 and before to a drastic increase up to 41 schools by 2020. This year we were able to come down somewhat on numbers, but we've done a number of major projects to be able to make sure that the schools are properly maintained. Have we gotten to where we want to in terms of perfection? Not just yet, because the problems have been long-standing. The issues have been long-standing, and the repairs that are necessary are significant. But we are chipping away year after year with the funds that have been allocated to the Ministry of Education to ensure that we have better conditions for our students and our teachers as well. As it relates to the George Lamming Primary School, this project is going to be done in two phases. The $376,000 that has been allocated is actually part of a wider sum of over $500,000, which would allow us to do some major repairs at the institution and also to create additional classroom space at the school to be able to house our special needs students. Now, what was particularly concerning for me is that for those who may recall, the Erdiston Primary School was pretty much relocated to George Lamming The Erdeston Primary School was then turned into the New Horizon Academy, and students were relocated to that particular institution at George Lamin. I must say here, Madam Chair, that Erdeston Primary School is very near and dear to my heart, and I know in my first few months it was very difficult to know that I no longer had a primary school available to call my own, but I've since adopted the New Horizon School, and it brings back quite a number of good memories, so I'm happy to do the necessary refurbishments there that we'll come to later as well. But this particular institution, which was only repaired, I think, in the late 80s, 90s, has a number of structural challenges. There's a lot of spalling, there's cracks and stuff on the floors, and we felt it best to engage the services of a structural engineer with a view to trying to understand better what were some of the issues presenting at that particular institution. That report recommended that we carry out extensive works at the school to preserve the condition of the school and to ensure that it was safe. It is not unsafe, but equally we want to make sure that it is safe and that we avoid what could inevitably be challenges down the road. So I'm very grateful to the Ministry of Finance for accommodating us in relation to this. But in addition to that, I have constant demands for students who have special needs and who require special needs education. And there is on the first floor of one of the classroom blocks an open space. I'm not sure how the architect may have designed it, but there's an open space which could no doubt hold about 4 classrooms. It's an open balcony, and what we've been able to do with the assistance of the architects is to try to find a way to enclose that space to create additional space at the institution. And for those who know the central location of the George Lamin School, it is really to allow for that catchment within the city areas and the surrounding areas to be able to have additional classroom space to be able to tend to our special needs children. So I'm hopeful that in addition to all of the other improvements we've done to Ann Hill Primary School and the Irving Wilson and to Erdeston and all of the other special needs institutions, that this as well will lend itself to again, the appeal that is being made by several of our constituents, several people who have students who are special needs across the system to be able to find additional places for them as well. The other program, Madam Chair, relates to fence-to-fence wireless internet connectivity across the schools. The sum of $385,000 has been allocated. Let me just say that we have just completed during these last few months the first phase of what we consider to be the easy schools that we can tackle. And by easy, I mean schools where the cost is nominal, but at the same time, the infrastructural and civil works costs are also manageable by this administration at this point in time. We've done 12 schools. In the first batch, the sum of $370,000. We've also, in this last domestic summer program, also allocated about $4.4 million for electrical upgrades at about 7 primary schools. And so this particular sum of money will again give us perhaps close to another 12 primary schools that will also benefit from fence-to-fence wireless connectivity at the institutions. And why, ma'am? We're starting with these schools is really because we recognize that even after the pandemic and our students return and our teachers return to the classroom environment, we are going to have to rely on connectivity. They're going to have devices available to them. Technology is here to stay, it's going nowhere. And it is our responsibility to complete what would have been started with EduTech in terms of the provisioning of devices, but also to make sure that our school plants are adequate for persons to be able to utilize the technology in a way that they can benefit from the necessary education. The sum of $7 million as well, ma'am, is also being made available to allow us to procure electronic devices. In other words, to be able to get the much needed devices that some of our students are still without up until today. The truth is, ma'am, that when we first started this exercise a number of weeks ago, trying to gather information as to how many students were without a device, the numbers varied. We were probably over 10,000 in terms of requests. My colleagues were sending me requests. Everybody was sending requests. But by the time the students went into school and our teachers were able to engage with them and speak to parents, and books were being collected and the orientation started, we began to discover that the numbers were not as significant as had at once appeared. And so that's why we waited a few weeks to be able to just try to understand exactly what was happening. And I say that because, ma'am, in many cases, the devices had not been returned, but there were requests for devices, for instance, at the secondary school, but the primary school device had not come back in. So that could not be passed on to the student below. We also had a situation where the students who were leaving fifth form and going on to tertiary, many of them didn't return devices as well. So we had a period where, especially because you're not doing face-to-face, you have the challenges of trying to do the information gathering that is necessary to make prudent decisions. And one thing, ma'am, that I pride myself on is being very clinical. There's no point coming to the Ministry of Finance and asking for money that we, at that point, do not need, because I know all of my colleagues have equal requests, sometimes greater than mine, for the little resources that we have. And so while we have prioritized this, at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we were clear as to what was actually required. The good thing is that Corporate Barbados has also come on board, both in the early stages of the pandemic, as well as still coming on board. And I want to just again express sincere thanks to all of the corporate donors, all of the people overseas who continue to help to carry the weight with us. You know, they make many hands making light work in relation to being able to get devices to children. The truth is, though, that even with the devices, we still have some of those challenges in relation to not only connectivity in the household, but we also have the issue of electricity. Some kids may not have electricity because parents are unemployed. We've been working very closely with the Child Care Board. We've been working very closely with our own Student Support Services Department, and making the call to our schools and parents to really try to provide us with the information so that we can find solutions to some of the problems that students face. Now, Madam Chair, at the beginning, and I think you perhaps have been one as well who would have reached out to me, at the beginning of this semester, in our initial discussions with the Ministry of Health, we would have wanted to do some satellite centers as well, to facilitate at the community centers the opportunity for students who could not get online, or who are online, say 2 days out of the 5 days of the week, to be able to go to those locations in order to get access to the computers. And the biggest challenge that we've had thus far is that obviously with the spike in cases, the dynamics in the country would have changed. So it is not that the Ministry of Education is a wicked ministry and doesn't want our children to go to these institutions, as some might try to protest and indicate. But the truth of the matter is that we have really tried to protect our kids, especially as we saw day after day an increase in the number of younger children, babies, contracting the virus. And so we've been trying to manage it. It's not a perfect situation, and we do know that coming out of this, we're going to have to rely not only on our internal support services, but also external sources, private sector organizations, charities, retired teachers, to be able to help to support our children who have really fallen through the cracks during this period. And so we don't take what the future holds for granted, because we know that there is significant learning loss as a result of us not being able to get back into school. And so every day we are catering for that. We've reduced the amount of items within the curriculum. We continue to engage with the unions, engage with the teachers, try to see how best we can provide the support in the online environment. We've had a number of our teachers trained online. We've entered into partnerships with a Finland university. For those who know, Finland is well known for its delivery of instruction and education. It's very serious about how it treats to the profession, and I believe that is what we need to have here as well. And so we have gone for the best, to be able to give our teachers the best and to equip them with the best skills that they can then deliver in the classroom. So the 7 million will give us another 5,000 odd devices. The intention is that that will hopefully fill the gap or the void that may be here now. Our request, obviously, may come in, that it may be more, but we anticipate some other donations that are coming in as well to support it. From a long-term perspective, because my hope is, and we have a quick meeting with the Ministry of Health later this afternoon, to look at where we are and to make some decisions going forward. But our hope, and the Prime Minister has spoken to this, is that we can get our kids back into school by January. And that is where we are working towards in terms of preparing the school plans, preparing the students who need to be vaccinated in the 12 to 18 age group. We are perhaps midway at this point. We have about just over 10,000, I believe, at this point that have been vaccinated. We have about 21,000 in that 12 to 18 age group. And we are going to continue to push and encourage parents to have their students vaccinated so that especially that age cohort can certainly start the movement, even if it is by a trial, of being able to get back into school. We are obviously anxious in terms of the Pfizer vaccine for the students who are under 12. Again, once the Ministry of Health and Wellness gives the go-ahead, and that is what we are waiting on to know whether we are in a position here to be able to administer that vaccine to our children. Again, then we will take the necessary steps at the appropriate time. Long term, in terms of devices, let me just say that it is our intention to not only put in place policies for the servicing of the equipment, because I heard touted in many circles that we had all these broken and these damaged devices and the children mashing up everything. Well, you know, from where I sit, children will mash up things, but at the same time, we also have a policy in place with our parents whereby they take responsibility for the devices when the children receive them. And they then, if the devices are broken or need to be repaired, then that conversation is entered into with the schools, and then a determination is made as to whether a replacement is given, whether the parent has to pay for the device. Basically, whatever is required, we will facilitate. Obviously, repeat offenses of damage is a cause for concern for the ministry. But at this point, one of the things that we've tried to do is to be understanding of the environment and try to accommodate our students as much as possible. Because the last thing that I will tolerate is a parent not coming forward because a device is broken, but then a child is being denied access to education through no fault of its own. And so we've had our student support teams going in where we have discovered cases where there's been repeat offenses of damage, and they have been working very closely with the schools and the families to try to bring some resolution to those scenarios. But we've only had about 1,000 devices or so that have had from damaged parts, which are no fault of the parents or no fault of the students, to faulty screens, or even in some cases where the child may drop the device. So in the grand scheme of things, it is not as significant as some people have made out. And I think that, again, my appeal would be more to the parents to make sure that the children understand that they have to respect the devices and they have to obviously care for these devices because a significant expenditure has been made on them. The other point is, going forward, is that we should soon be able to, again, speak to the country in relation to the digibooks and looking at how do we transform our existing textbooks into a format that is then available on the computer, that instead of the students having to, and the parents having to pay for the textbooks in the hard form, that we now move in the direction of being able to have more technology available through the actual devices. So that is a work in progress. We've been meeting with a number of entities to try to finalize what tools we will use. We've been working closely with UNICEF on programs like Notes Masters, which is available to our teachers and soon to our students. And we've been exploring different mediums for which we can certainly have a long-term plan in place, because we recognize that this is a significant investment. It was never intended that we would be buying this quantity of devices in this particular way, albeit that we had initially wanted to purchase devices from Kenya at the time. But the challenges that we've experienced in relation to the shipment and the length of time led us to this point where we've had to source devices that are really available, because there's a mad rush on at this point in time to still acquire technology. And I hope that, as Prime Minister has said to leaders across the world in relation to climate change, that the leaders start to realize that they have to lead in relation to leaving no child behind in relation to technology as well. The other area, Madam Chair, relates to New Horizon Academy. I would have mentioned that before as one of the facilities that would have been the former Erdeston Primary School, which then was relocated to the George Lamin Primary School. The Cabinet of Barbados has agreed that that school will shortly be facilitated in the form of a secondary school, which will add an additional secondary school to our existing complement. And there are some repairs that are required at the institution to allow us to make the transformation of the school from a primary school into a secondary school. That school has been facilitating a number of the students who have had various behavioral challenges. It was intended to be a place where you would pull out the students who were giving trouble. You would work with them with all the necessary behavioral support and emotional support that was necessary, and allow them then to be reintegrated back into the classroom. But what we've found is that in recent times, the oversight that was necessary on the institution wasn't there. And as a consequence, we've had to pretty much do an entire overhaul and fit this school within the format of the wider reforms that we're looking at across the system in education. The next school, Madam Chair.
Honorable Member, we literally have 2 minutes left.
No problem, ma'am. The next school is Harrison College. The sum of $424,794 is required to facilitate renovations to the staff room at the school. This school was impacted by Hurricane Elsa. As a consequence, the entire ceiling of the staff room has pretty much fallen in. As many of you know, this is a very old institution. Some of you have attended the institution indeed and are well aware of the issues at that school. But we will be carrying out renovations to the staff room shortly. The next one, Madam Chair, and I'm coming to the end, so please give me a little more time to just cover so that others can respond. The renovations to the Alma Paris Memorial School, Phase 1, I want to make it clear today that officially we are now in a position with these funds to be able to begin the transformation of that school, which, yes, here, which is long overdue. But just like with all of the other institutions that we have spent significant sums on, we've had to make sure that we get it as close to perfect as possible. We started off with about, I think we had budgeted about $610,000 initially. But then when we realized that we were actually going to make the transition there into doing a lot of technical stuff, we started to bring in the robotics and coding. We recognized that the MEP consultant's report had not formed part of the initial quotation. And as a result, we sent it back out and made some revisions to the actual spaces. So now we have, I think, culinary arts rooms, we have areas for robotics and coding. We have also increased the number of psychosocial support, so we have guidance counselors' rooms, we have rooms for the social workers. It is an entire multidisciplinary approach to the way in which I believe an alternative education school should be. And so it took us a little while in terms of the architectural drawings to basically improve on what was there before. And we're going to be redoing the car park area. The Honourable Member St. Peter, I'm sure, will be glad to see this facility actually coming back into use. But again, this has been long overdue. The school, as you know, was closed under the last administration unceremoniously. And as a result, a number of students who would have underperformed in the common entrance examination in Maths and English, but who would have been well equipped to do the arts and the technical subjects were basically cast aside, nowhere to go. And as a consequence, we took a decision in 2018 that by hook or by crook, and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition was part of that as well, that decision making, that we would bring the Alma Paris Memorial School back to its glory, but with additions to be able to help it to transform education going forward. And so this facility is going to take about 4 months from the time that we get the funds from the Ministry of Finance to do the extensive repairs. It is going to cater to between, I think, 40 to 60 or 60 to 75 students in the initial stages. There's a second phase. There's a building on the site where we're going to demolish, and that is with a view to being able to do phase 2. which will obviously attract additional funding. But by the end of it, our hope over the next 2, 3, 4 years is to be able to have a facility that can hold at least 150 students with the necessary support. So it is a long-term plan. It ain't no rush job. It ain't no, we now come and we're just trying to be able to do things. We have taken our time. We have made sure that we've had the input from the Education Reform Unit to be able to look at how all of these pieces are going to fit in terms of the reform process. And we want to make sure that those parents out there who have children that they are concerned about that seem to fall through the cracks too often and they don't know where to send them, that they now will have additional institutions in the educational landscape to be able to consider for them. Lastly, ma'am, lastly is the appointment of to the pre-construction cost for the project manager fees at the school meals project. Again, this is not the traditional school meals. This relates to the specific facility where there were significant cost overruns when we came into office in 2018. We have been in long negotiations over the past few years with the contractor and the entire team that would have been working on the project, trying to bring some resolution to that facility. We are a bit closer now, and very, very much closer because we've included the quantity surveyors, and we are at the point now where we should shortly be in a position to start the works on that site and be able to get the school meals facility at 6 Roads concluded. Lastly, ma'am, the Hope and You project, with my last 2 minutes, Madam Chair. The sum of $2.284 million is required to facilitate the oversight of the construction and operationalization of the Hope Agricultural Training Institute and the UE Center for Food Security and Entrepreneurship, the Jukes project. Ma'am, I came to office, inherited this particular project, which I want to just say that the People's Republic of China graciously facilitated these 2 projects for agriculture to the government of Barbados, and for that I am eternally grateful, and so is my government. However, ma'am, we have had to spend some time looking at how we make this work for us, and when I say that because it appeared as though agriculture, education, and certainly finance were certainly not in the room when this whole project was envisioned. As a consequence, we have had to put in place project managers. We've had to start to look not only at how these 2 projects are going to benefit Barbados, but we've had to step back somewhat and actually look at how we reform agriculture from the nursery school all the way through the system, so that projects like the Honourable Member spoke about earlier in relation to the feed program and the LEARS project now have new meaning. Because any child from nursery or primary who wants to pursue the studies in agriculture or wants to work in agriculture must be able to clearly map what they want to do and how they are going to do it. And so we have created a task force which is headed by Dr. Charleston Braffett, who I don't think it is any mystery in terms of his academic qualification, but he has been leading the charge with us in the ministry, with the collaboration of the Ministry of Agriculture, along with all of the tertiary institutions, along with the TechVoc unit within the Ministry of Education, along with CARDI, along with the Barbados Agricultural Society, and we have now got to a point where we have started to rationalize programs, to look at curriculum, to look at how the projects that will be at the end of the pathway for all of the people who are interested in agriculture and interested in research, how these 2 projects are now going to make sense for the people of this country, Madam Chair. And I'm therefore grateful that we now have the funds to be able to start or to engage the services of construction managers, and also for the services that need to be put into the facility and the sites to be able to get the project going. And with those few words, Madam Chair, I beg to move that this head to
Should beg. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm glad that some members saw the humor in the last words of the honorable member with respect to those few words that she uttered. I do not similarly share a sense of humor around that. My honorable friend has learned well from her principal mentor. Much long talk, meandering along the way to a conclusion several times referred to. That is the conclusion. However, with respect to the presentation today, I would have to acknowledge that unlike her mentor, she stuck to the themes and hit on pertinent points for the speech that she just gave to this honorable house. However, the point I want to make, perhaps more substantively, is this. We make a nonsense of debates like this. How much time do we have, Madam Chair?
We have minus time.
We have minus time. We make a nonsense of debates like this. This is $96 million of the people's money that we're talking about. It is not a laughing matter with those few words. The honorable member said what she felt compelled to say as being an important contribution to this debate, and it took her a long time so to do. And that, to me, illustrates the fact that we make a nonsense of debates like these. You have 3 hours, and you bring 12, 13, we got about 4 or 5 heads still left that have not been touched. And I have somewhat to talk about a 360 program under which we unfair poor people in Barbados by not properly looking after. But I can't speak about that today because we are now in minus time, and there are other issues. And I can't properly respond to the honorable minister who just spoke, and who spoke with reference to important matters with reference to her portfolio. I mean, this head speaks to things like mental health, which I insist, because of what we're now going through at the level of the schools with respect to our young population, we will see the repercussions of what is now happening in our schools, with our young people being kept apart to the extent that they are, and being subjected to the now COVID environment. We will see the long-term effects on that in our young people after a while. Not a lot of talk is being, this speaks about psychological services and family support services. These are important things that we need to talk about. We have 3 hours, very little time in which to talk, and you bring 12 heads. The standing orders, which I inquired about, speak to that 3-hour period, and that you can bring up to 12 heads, because I think, Madam Chair, it anticipates a cabinet of about 12 or 13, maybe 15 people. But when you have a cabinet with 27 ministries, you cannot bring a supplementary request down here and expect in 3 hours to have a serious debate. Bring 6 and come back with another 6 another day. I mean, this is serious business, Madam Chair. You can laugh at the use of language of the honourable member with those few words. They were important words, and I give you that. And they should constitute the subject for a proper debate. But you come down here, there are 4 or 5 heads we cannot look at because we're now past the time, and we cannot properly debate the ones we have looked at because we're pressed for time. The standing orders need to be changed. They anticipate a cabinet of about 12 or 13 or 14 people. You have a cabinet of 27. And you can't come down here, especially in these crucial times, to talk about $96 million or $396 million of the people's money and gloss over it and run and go home.
Honorable Member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand the honourable member who just spoke's position, and I too believe that the honourable member is well aware that there is a process, if he believes, as the leader of the opposition, that any of the standing orders require amendment, that he can so follow. He's been here long enough that he should be familiar with the rules of the House. But I do take the point that these are serious matters, these are different times.
Madam Chair, the honourable leader should not mislead the present honourable company. The honourable member who now stands to his feet can, in his capacity as a member of this House, introduce certain measures to be discussed that would improve the way we do business. But if we have a management commission that does not meet, how does that happen?
Honorable Leader of the House.
Madam Chair, again, there is a process, and certainly if the honourable member wishes that process to be reviewed, he can do so. This is not, we have not done anything that is unusual. We do have a number of, we won 30 seats, including the honourable members as well. We do have a cabinet that is actively working every day and coming to work and accounted for and making sure that we can deliver all of these things. It is not by chance, Madam Chair, that I took long, because there's a lot to talk about, as I'm sure other members who have spoken before me will also agree.
Madam Chair, the honourable member seems misled to the view that I am complaining that she took long. I'm saying she didn't have enough time to properly present to us matters of importance, and that she spoke to thematic issues, and she spoke to issues of relevance, especially pertinently right now. I'm commending her and lamenting the fact that she did not have enough time. And in that context, we cannot continue to make a nonsense of this type of debate. We cannot continue to frustrate the efforts, the hard work and energies put in by honorable members like the member for St. Michael Southeast. Works hard as a Minister of Education. She wants to come here and have a properly focused debate on matters that fall to her, which are urgent and which the Barbadian public is concerned about. You can't do this nonsense. You got 27 ministries, remember that. And the work now is urgent. You can't come and just, I give up.
Madam Chair, I therefore beg to move that Head 87 do not stand part.
The question is that Head 87 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 34, Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment, in the amount of $3,920,422.
Honourable member for Christchurch East Central.
Madam Chair, in the interest of time, I would just beg to move that Head 34 stand back.
Question is that Head 34 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 81, Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources, in the amount of $18,676,989.
Honourable member for St. Michael West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I beg to move that Head 81, stand part, the amount of $18.6 million. Now, just quickly, in the interest of time, it's essentially to facilitate payment to contractors working on the highway project, as well as to continue the government's program in respect of millennium paving across the island. I'm sure members would have seen the benefits in the areas. And of course, we are coming to the lead of the opposition very shortly. In the interest of time, I can't recite all the roads that we have done, all the other roads that we intend to do, including those the honourable member St. Michael West. But in addition to that, it's just to facilitate the payment of overtime for a number of workers who were involved in the cleanup of the aftermath of Hurricane Elsa. We had a lot of that to do. And therefore, with those closing remarks, Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 81 stand part.
The question is that Head 81 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay.
Nay. Nay. Can we have a division? Can we have a divide?
The ayes have it.
Divide. Madam Chair, division has been called. Ms. Bradshaw?
Agreed. Yes.
Ms. Ford? Mr. Humphrey? Mr. Sutherland?
We passed this.
Mr. Goodenejo?
Yeah.
Your Honor? Mr. Rowe?
Yeah.
Reverend?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Ford? Lieutenant Bostic?
I will answer on this occasion. Aye.
Lieutenant Colonel Bostic, sorry.
You got it right.
Lieutenant Colonel Bostic.
Aye again, but I'm only voting once.
Yeah. Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Strawn?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Dr. Duguid? Mr. Abrams? Mr. Griffith? Ms. Husbands? Well, everybody.
Aye, aye.
Nineteen honorable members voted in favor of the head passing. You can just say the head, what, some, yeah, that's head. Make sure you got the head right. Head 81.
Question is that head 81 stand par?
Yeah,
or-
just say pass.
Sorry,
Head 81 stands pass.
yeah, head 81 stands par, 82,
Head 86.
86.
Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Honorable member for the
Yes,
city,
yes,
please
ma'am.
pass this. Move the head.
Madam Chair, I
In-
beg to move that head 86
In
In
the
the
amount,
amount of-
in
sorry,
the amount of
23,192,400
$23,192,400.
dollars.
Stamp part.
Question is that head 86 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay.
Division, man.
Division. Your mic.
Ms. Bradshaw,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall, Ms. Ford, Mr. Humphrey,
Aye.
Mr. Sutherland,
Aye.
Mr. Ganejo,
Aye.
Your Honor, Mr. Rowe,
Aye.
Reverend Appley,
Aye.
Mr. Prescott,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Lieutenant Colonel Bostic,
Aye.
Mr. Phillips,
Aye.
Mr. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Abrams, Mr. Griffith, Dr. Duguid, Ms. Husbands. Madam Chair, 19 honorable members voted. Head stands passed.
So head 86 stands passed. Passed, does it?
One more.
That's all right. So this was, there was 12.
Hmm?
This was
Head 82. Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. in the amount of $3,720,500.
Honorable member for Christchurch West Central.
I wish to move that head 82 in the tune of $3,720,500. Stand par.
Question is that head 82 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Yeah, that's all. Just double check.
Thank you.
Yes.
Honorable member for Christchurch East Central.
Yes, Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one money resolution in committee.
Question is that I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one money resolution in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Sorry, Standing Finance Committee. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of the Standing Finance Committee has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable member for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
No, sir. No, sir. Read the first time, sir.
Sorry, I beg to move that this resolution do be read the first time.
The question is that the resolution be read a first time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be read a second time.
The question is that the resolution be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be now agreed to.
The question is that the aforementioned resolution be now agreed to. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, Mr. Speaker, we've come to the end of today's sitting. Just before we rise, I just want to make it clear that to the public who might be listening, I do believe that while we have a system in place to be able to deal with these supplementaries, the truth of the matter is that each of us as ministers also have a further opportunity to engage the public on and elaborate on further matters. And that is what happens in a democracy. So I don't want the public to believe that in any way this process is a farce or anything as the Honorable Leader may want persons to believe. But this has happened before in terms of that we may not always get through resolutions. Even if you think about the estimates debate, oftentimes we get to the end of the debate and we don't get to all heads. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words and the adjournment, I would beg to move that the House now be adjourned until the 16th of November at 10 a.m.
The question is that this House be adjourned until Tuesday, the 16th day of November at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 16th day of November at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.